The restaurant went silent when Cole said it. White tablecloths, flickering candles, and 50 pairs of eyes suddenly focused on our corner table. He leaned back in his chair, that familiar smirk spreading across his face like he'd just delivered the punchline to the world's cruelest joke. "You'll come crawling back when you realize no one else will put up with you." His voice carried across the dining room. I watched couples pause mid-conversation, servers freeze with plates in their hands. Everyone waited for my reaction. The tears, the shouting, the dramatic scene he clearly expected. Instead, I folded my napkin with steady hands and placed it gently beside my untouched dinner. The crystal glasses caught the candlelight as I stood, my chair making the softest scrape against the hardwood floor. "I don't crawl, Cole," I said, my voice calm as morning coffee. "I rebuild." I walked past him toward the exit, my heels clicking against the floor in perfect rhythm. Behind me, his laughter echoed through the restaurant. That laugh used to make me melt. Now it fueled something else entirely. Something he would learn to fear. The heavy door swung shut behind me, cutting off his amusement. Outside, the cool evening air hit my face, and for the first time in months, I could breathe freely. We'd met 3 years ago at Fletcher Marketing, 2 rising stars in the city's most competitive agency. Cole had swagger that filled every room he entered, charm that made clients sign contracts before dessert arrived, and ambition that burned bright enough to light up downtown. He loved being the mentor, never the equal. During our first project together, he'd lean over my shoulder while I worked, his cologne mixing with the coffee-scented air of our shared office space. "Let me show you how this really works," he'd say, taking my mouse to adjust layouts I'd spent hours perfecting. I loved him anyway. Maybe because he seemed so sure of everything when I felt uncertain about my own abilities. Maybe because his confidence made me believe I could be better than I thought possible. The other designers whispered about us behind conference room doors. Some called it mentorship. Others called it something else entirely. But when Cole looked at me like I was the only person in the room, none of that mattered. "You're nothing without my direction," he told me once, kissing my forehead like it was a compliment. I should have known then. Should have seen the warning signs flashing like neon in the darkness. But love makes you blind to red flags that everyone else can see. The promotion announcement came on a Tuesday morning in October. Rain streaked the conference room windows as our creative director, Patricia, read the list of new positions. Account executives shuffled papers. Junior designers held their breath. Creative Director of Digital Campaigns, Patricia announced, her voice cutting through the nervous tension. "Mia Thompson." The room erupted in polite applause. I felt my cheeks flush as colleagues offered congratulations, their handshakes warm and genuine. Across the table, Cole's smile looked painted on, stretched too tight at the corners. He stood and walked over, placing his hand on my shoulder. To everyone else, it probably looked supportive. But his grip tightened like a vice, his fingers digging into the fabric of my blazer. "Congratulations," he said loud enough for the room to hear. Then, leaning close to my ear, he whispered, "You only got that because you're safe." They needed a diversity hire. The words hit like ice water. Around us, people chatted about upcoming projects and celebration drinks. Nobody heard him poison my moment of triumph. That night, I waited at our apartment until midnight. His side of the bed stayed cold and empty. The sound of his key never came. The office happy hour happened every Friday at Murphy's Bar, 3 blocks from our building. Exposed brick walls, dim lighting, and overpriced cocktails that tasted like validation after a long week. I usually loved these gatherings, the way work stress melted into laughter and gossip. But that Friday, everything changed. I was coming back from the restroom when I heard Cole's voice carrying over the crowd. He stood near the dartboard, surrounded by junior account executives who hung on his every word like gospel. "She used me to climb the ladder," he said, gesturing with his beer bottle. Classic office politics. Get close to someone with connections, learn everything you can, then step on them to reach the next level. Laughter rippled through the group. Someone made a comment about women in marketing. Someone else added a joke about sleeping your way to the top. The words blurred together into a symphony of humiliation. My face burned as I stood frozen in the doorway. Every eye in our corner of the bar seemed focused on me, waiting to see how I'd react to being exposed as a fraud, a user, a manipulator. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't defend myself against lies that would only sound like desperate excuses. Instead, I walked home, opened my laptop, and updated my resume until dawn. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling. I packed my personal items into a cardboard box while Cole watched from across the office floor, that familiar smirk playing at his lips like a private joke only he understood. My succulent plants fit perfectly beside my coffee mug and the small picture frame that held my college graduation photo. 3 years of work reduced to objects that could fit in a shipping container. "Where you headed, babe?" Cole called out, loud enough for half the design team to hear. His voice dripped with false concern, like he actually cared about my answer. I looked over my shoulder one last time, memorizing his face, the way his expensive shirt wrinkled at the collar, the small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood accident he'd told me about on our second date. "Anywhere you're not," I said, my voice steady as stone. The elevator dinged. I stepped inside with my box and pressed the button for the lobby. As the door slid shut, I caught a glimpse of his expression changing from amusement to something that might have been concern. By the time I reached the parking garage, my resignation email was already sent. Subject line, effective immediately. No explanation needed. My new apartment was a studio in the Arts District, barely large enough for a bed and a desk, with walls so thin I could hear my neighbor's television through the drywall. Cardboard boxes lined every surface, mixed with takeout containers from restaurants I couldn't really afford. My savings account balance mocked me from my phone screen. 3 months of rent, maybe 4 if I survived on ramen and tap water. The confidence that had carried me through resignation was evaporating like steam from my morning coffee. Then something shifted. I opened my laptop and started designing, not for clients or bosses or anyone else's vision, but for myself. A mock campaign for the coffee shop downstairs, complete with logo redesign and social media strategy. The owner, Marcus, was a former teacher who'd invested his retirement savings into espresso machines and dreams of community connection. When I showed him my work, his eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "This is exactly what we needed," he said, writing me a check for $500. "Do you have a business card?" I didn't. But by the end of that week, I would. "Maybe I can do this for myself," I whispered to my empty apartment that night. Word spread through the Arts District like coffee shop gossip. Marcus showed my designs to Elena, who owned a yoga studio 3 blocks away. Elena recommended me to James, who'd just opened a vintage bookstore downtown. Each client led to another, their enthusiasm becoming my marketing department. My studio apartment transformed into a workspace. I pushed my bed against the wall and set up a drafting table near the window. Sticky notes covered my mirror, each one representing a project, a deadline, a small victory in my growing portfolio. The yoga studio wanted earth tones and flowing typography. The bookstore needed something classic but approachable. A local bakery asked for packaging design that would make their croissants irresistible from across the street. I worked 12-hour days, fueled by ambition and leftover Chinese food. My back ached from hunching over my laptop, but every completed project felt like another step away from the person Cole thought I was. One evening, exhausted but exhilarated, I grabbed a whiteboard marker and wrote 2 words in bold letters across my bathroom mirror: Thompson Creative. The name looked right. Felt right. Like it had been waiting for me to find it all along. Cole's call came on a Wednesday morning while I was designing a logo for a new restaurant. His contact photo still smiled at me from my phone screen, frozen in a moment when everything seemed simpler. "Heard you're freelancing," his voice carried that old familiar condescension. "Cute little side hustle. Need help getting real clients?" I set down my coffee and stared out the window at the street below. People hurried past with purpose, carrying briefcases and dreams and the weight of their own ambitions. No, I said, my voice calm as morning mist. But thanks for the motivation. His laughter echoed through the phone speaker, sharp and dismissive. Come on, Mia. This isn't sustainable. You'll come crawling back when reality hits. I ended the call without another word. Then I opened my project folder and counted 12 completed designs, 8 ongoing projects, and a waiting list that stretched into next month. Reality, it turned out, looked nothing like what Cole imagined. That afternoon, I incorporated Thompson Creative as an official LLC. The paperwork felt heavy in my hands, weighted with possibility and the quiet satisfaction of proving someone wrong without saying a word. The website launched on a Friday. Clean lines, portfolio samples arranged like gallery pieces, and a contact form that actually worked. I'd spent weeks perfecting every pixel, every color choice, every word of copy that would represent my brand to the world. By Monday, 5 new inquiry emails waited in my inbox. I rented a small office space in a converted warehouse, nothing fancy but mine. White walls, industrial lighting, and windows that overlooked the city skyline. The lease agreement felt like a declaration of independence. My first official employee was Amanda, a recent design school graduate with talent that outshined her experience. We worked side by side, sharing coffee and ideas, building something that felt bigger than the sum of its parts. I can't believe you used to work for Fletcher, Amanda said one afternoon, reviewing my portfolio from the agency days. This stuff is good, but your new work is incredible. It's like you found your voice. I hadn't thought about it that way, but she was right. Without Cole's constant corrections, his suggestions that always sounded more like commands, my design aesthetic had evolved into something uniquely mine. A message notification pinged on my computer. Are you taking corporate clients? The sender's email signature made my heart skip. Davidson Properties, Commercial Real Estate Development. The Davidson Properties building towered 30 floors above downtown, its glass facade reflecting clouds and possibilities. I wore my best suit and carried a leather portfolio that held 3 months of my best work. The conference room was bigger than my first apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows, mahogany table, and chairs that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Around the table sat 6 executives in expensive suits, their expressions ranging from skeptical to mildly curious. We're looking for a complete rebrand, explained Victoria Davidson, the company's founder and CEO. Logo, marketing materials, website overhaul. Our current agency presented some concepts, but honestly, they felt generic. I opened my portfolio and spread my samples across the polished table. The yoga studio's serene branding. The bookstore's literary elegance. The restaurant's sophisticated warmth. Each project told a story about businesses that had found their voice through thoughtful design. Design isn't just about looking good, I said, pointing to a logo that had increased the bakery's foot traffic by 40%. It's about connecting with people who need what you're offering. 2 hours later, Victoria shook my hand with the firm grip of someone used to making decisions quickly and decisively. You beat out Everett and Company, she said with a smile. Their presentation was polished, but yours had soul. The contract signing happened in Victoria's corner office, overlooking the city where my journey had started and stumbled and finally found its footing. The numbers on the page seemed surreal. Enough money to hire 2 more designers, lease a bigger space, and build Thompson Creative into something substantial. My friend Lucas, who'd become my unofficial accountant and business advisor, helped me understand the tax implications and liability issues. We'd known each other since college, and his accounting firm specialized in helping small businesses navigate their growth phases. This is your big break, he said, reviewing the contract terms with the careful attention of someone who understood how quickly opportunities could disappear. You ready for this? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with an email from Cole. The subject line read, "Congratulations." His message was brief and poisonous. Saw the news about Davidson Properties. Beginner's luck is a beautiful thing. Don't let it go to your head. I showed Lucas the email, watching his eyebrows raise in disgust. What should I say back? I asked. Lucas grinned and handed me my phone. Something that'll make him regret underestimating you. I typed my response, funny how luck looks exactly like hard work. Then I hit send and signed the contract that would change everything. Thompson Creative expanded faster than I'd imagined possible. We moved into a real office space with separate rooms for different teams, a conference area for client meetings, and windows that let in enough natural light to make the work feel joyful instead of obligatory. Amanda became my lead designer. I hired Marcus from a competing firm, and Sarah fresh out of art school with ideas that challenged everything I thought I knew about visual communication. We were small but mighty, creative but professional, hungry but not desperate. Our client list grew through word of mouth and referrals. The Davidson Properties rebrand had attracted attention from other real estate companies, then restaurants, then tech startups looking for brands that felt both cutting-edge and trustworthy. Every success felt like another step away from the person Cole had tried to convince me I was. Not the diversity hire. Not the woman who used people to climb ladders. Just someone who understood that good design could change how businesses connected with the world. Then Lucas called with news that made my coffee taste bitter. Fletcher Marketing lost 3 major clients this month, he said, his voice careful and professional. Including Davidson Properties. They switched to Thompson Creative. I stared out my office window at the city below, processing what this meant. One of those clients was Cole's biggest account, Lucas continued. Word is, he's not handling it well. The Industry Expo happened every spring at the convention center, 3 days of networking, presentations, and carefully orchestrated small talk over expensive cocktails. I'd avoided it the previous year, still licking my wounds from Fletcher and unsure if Thompson Creative was ready for that level of scrutiny. This year felt different. Our booth was modest but professional, featuring our best work on sleek displays that Amanda had designed with surgical precision. Business cards disappeared faster than I could restock them. That's when I saw him. Cole stood across the exhibition hall, wearing the same expensive suit he'd worn to Fletcher's company parties. But something had changed in his posture, a tightness around his eyes that suggested recent sleepless nights and difficult conversations with bosses. He spotted me at the same moment, his expression cycling through surprise, calculation, and something that might have been embarrassment. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other across the crowded space. Then he walked over, his familiar swagger slightly diminished but still present. Didn't think you'd last 6 months, he said, gesturing at our booth with false casualness. I smiled, the expression feeling genuine for the first time all day. I didn't think you'd lose 3 clients in 1 quarter. The color drained from his face. Around us, conversations continued, but something in our small corner of the expo had shifted permanently. Enjoy the show, Cole, I said, turning back to a potential client who'd been waiting patiently for our conversation to end. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in May. Jonathan Pierce from Pierce Capital Management, an investment firm that specialized in creative agency mergers and acquisitions. His voice carried the smooth confidence of someone used to discussing millions of dollars like grocery lists. We're looking at consolidating several smaller agencies into a larger entity, he explained during our lunch meeting at the city's most expensive restaurant. Creating synergies, sharing resources, building something that can compete with the major players. He slid a folder across the white tablecloth. Inside were financial profiles of 6 marketing agencies, including detailed revenue reports, client lists, and growth projections. My hands didn't shake as I flipped through the pages, but my heartbeat definitely accelerated. The third profile made me pause, Fletcher Marketing and Associates. We understand you have history there, Jonathan said, watching my reaction carefully. Victoria Davidson mentioned you might have insights into their operations. I closed the folder and met his eyes. What kind of insights? The kind that help us determine fair market value, he replied. And whether certain agencies are positioned for growth or just trying to survive. I thought about Cole's face at the expo, the tightness around his eyes, the way he'd lost 3 major clients in a single quarter. Let's schedule a follow-up meeting, I said. I think we have a lot to discuss. The boardroom at Pierce Capital was all glass and steel, designed to make important decisions feel both comfortable and urgent. I sat quietly at the conference table, my legal pad blank, my expression neutral as Cole delivered his presentation to the room full of investors. He didn't know I was there. Jonathan had positioned me behind the other Thompson creative team members, just another face in the crowd of potential merger candidates. From my angle, I could see his hands trembling slightly as he clicked through slides showing Fletcher's declining revenue. Market fluctuations have impacted our client retention, Cole explained, his voice steady despite the sweat beading at his temples. But we're projecting a strong rebound in Q4. The investors asked pointed questions about the Davidson Properties account, about client satisfaction scores, about the three-quarter decline in new business development. Each answer revealed more weakness, more desperation, more evidence that Fletcher was drowning slowly in its own complacency. When they finally called for questions from other attendees, I cleared my throat and leaned forward. "Nice presentation, Cole," I said, watching his face drain of color as he finally spotted me in the crowd. "I can see why you're looking to sell." The room went silent. Jonathan's slight smile suggested this moment had been carefully orchestrated. "Meeting adjourned," Jonathan announced. "We'll reconvene tomorrow to discuss terms." As people filed out, Cole stood frozen at the front of the room, staring at me like I'd materialized from his worst nightmare. The acquisition happened through a shell company Lucas had helped me establish, layers of legal protection that kept Thompson Creative's name off the initial paperwork. To Fletcher's board of directors, they were selling to Pierce Capital's investment portfolio. They had no idea that the real buyer was the woman Cole had dismissed as nothing without his direction. The price was lower than Fletcher's peak valuation but fair considering their recent struggles. Cole, as a minority partner, had limited say in the decision. The board voted unanimously to accept the offer rather than risk bankruptcy within 6 months. "Do you want him to know it's you?" my attorney asked during the final contract review. I stared at the signature pages, thinking about that night in the restaurant when Cole's laughter had echoed off the walls, about the happy hour where he'd painted me as a manipulative climber, about every small cruelty that had led to this moment. "Not yet," I said, signing my name with steady hands. "Let him think he's safe a little longer." The paperwork made it official. Thompson Creative Holdings now owned Fletcher Marketing and Associates, including all client contracts, office leases, and employee agreements. Cole would keep his job, at least temporarily, while we determined how to integrate the two companies. He had no idea that his fate now rested in the hands of the woman he'd tried to destroy. The Fletcher office needed work. Faded carpet, outdated furniture, and the kind of fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. I walked through the space with Amanda and Marcus, taking notes about necessary renovations while Cole was away at client meetings. "It's like stepping back in time," Amanda whispered, examining the ancient computer monitors and mismatched office chairs. "How did they compete with equipment this old?" "We started with the basics, new computers, ergonomic furniture, and lighting that didn't make people want to quit by lunchtime. The walls got fresh paint in Thompson Creative's signature colors." The conference room received a complete overhaul, with modern presentation equipment and furniture that could actually accommodate productive meetings. Meanwhile, I reviewed every employee contract and performance evaluation. Some of Fletcher's designers showed real talent that had been suppressed by outdated management styles. Others had grown complacent, coasting on past successes without pushing creative boundaries. The grand reopening party would announce the transformation to clients and industry contacts. Gold-embossed invitations, elegant catering, and a guest list that included every major player in the city's marketing landscape. Each invitation was personally signed, including the one addressed to Cole Everett, who still had no idea that his former girlfriend now owned his livelihood. Cole's invitation arrived at his apartment on a Thursday morning, delivered by courier in a cream-colored envelope with Thompson Creative's logo embossed in gold foil. Inside, elegant script announced, "You're invited to Thompson Creative's grand reopening celebration." According to his assistant, he'd laughed when he opened it, assuming someone had made a clerical error. She wouldn't dare, he'd said, tossing the invitation onto his desk like expensive trash. But curiosity, or maybe some unconscious instinct for self-preservation, convinced him to attend. He arrived at the Fletcher building, now officially Thompson Creative's second location. Wearing his most expensive suit and the kind of confident smile that suggested he expected to network his way into new opportunities. The transformation was stunning. Where outdated carpet had once muffled footsteps, polished hardwood now gleamed under artistic lighting. Modern furniture created conversation areas that actually encouraged collaboration. Large windows, previously blocked by filing cabinets, now offered panoramic views of the city skyline. Cole wandered through the space like a tourist in his own former workplace, his expression shifting from amusement to confusion to something approaching concern. This wasn't just renovation. This was resurrection. Then the lights dimmed, and I stepped onto the small stage we'd installed near the conference room. "Thank you all for being part of this exciting new chapter," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the renovated space. In the crowd, Cole's face went completely white. The spotlight felt warm against my face as I looked out at the assembled crowd of clients, competitors, and industry contacts. Nearly 200 people had come to witness Thompson Creative's expansion, their champagne glasses catching the light like small celebrations. 2 years ago, I started Thompson Creative with a simple belief, I continued, finding Cole's frozen figure in the crowd. That great design comes from understanding people, not underestimating them. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. Several clients nodded, recognizing the philosophy that had guided their successful rebranding projects. "Tonight, we're not just celebrating a renovation," I said, gesturing to the transformed space around us. "We're celebrating what happens when talented people are given the freedom to do their best work." Cole had started moving toward the exit, but found his path blocked by clusters of conversation and networking. He was trapped, forced to listen to my speech about transformation and second chances and the power of believing in yourself when others don't. "The marketing landscape is changing," I concluded, my gaze finding his panicked eyes one final time. "And Thompson Creative is ready to lead that change." The applause was thunderous. Camera flashes lit up the room as journalists captured the moment. As people began approaching the stage, Cole finally managed to push through the crowd toward the door. But it was too late. He'd seen enough to understand that his world had fundamentally shifted. He found me 20 minutes later, cornering me near the catering table as I accepted congratulations from Davidson Properties' executive team. His face had cycled through several shades of pale, finally settling on a grayish color that matched his suddenly obvious panic. "You," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You bought my company?" The conversation around us gradually quieted as people sensed the tension. Victoria Davidson raised an eyebrow but continued sipping her champagne, clearly enjoying the drama. "No, Cole," I replied, my voice steady and professional despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I invested in untapped potential and discovered it was significantly overrated." Camera flashes popped around us as journalists captured what would become tomorrow's industry gossip. The story was too good to ignore. Former employee buys out the company that undervalued her, confronts ex-boyfriend who predicted her failure. Cole's hand trembled as he reached for my arm, then thought better of it. "We should talk," he said, desperation creeping into his voice. "Privately." "Of course," I said, smiling for the cameras as we shook hands. "My assistant will schedule something for next week." The handshake lasted exactly 3 seconds, long enough for the photographers to capture the moment, short enough to emphasize that this was business, not personal. Though for me, it had always been both. Monday morning brought a parade of Fletcher employees to my office, each carrying resignation letters, project files, and varying degrees of confusion about their professional futures. The renovation had been the easy part. Managing the human transition would require more delicate surgery. Most of the designers were eager to embrace Thompson Creative's collaborative culture. They'd been suffocating under Fletcher's rigid hierarchy, their creativity squeezed into templates and formulas that produced safe, forgettable work. "It's like being allowed to breathe again," one designer told me, showing me a concept that would have been rejected immediately under the old management structure. Cole's corner office stood empty, his nameplate already removed and replaced with a simple sign reading Conference Room B. His personal items had been packed by security and left in cardboard boxes by the reception desk. Around noon, my assistant handed me a printed email with the subject line, "We should talk." Cole's message was brief but loaded with the kind of desperation I recognized from my own lowest moments. "I know you're angry. I deserve that. But please don't humiliate me publicly. I'll do whatever you need." I stared at the email for several minutes, thinking about the restaurant, the happy hour, the casual cruelty of someone who'd assumed I would disappear quietly. Then I typed my response, "My office. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Some conversations couldn't be avoided forever. He arrived early, sitting in my reception area like a defendant waiting for sentencing. Through the glass wall of my office, I watched him check his phone repeatedly, adjust his tie, and practice expressions that might convey the right combination of remorse and hope. When I finally called him in, he looked smaller somehow. The expensive suit couldn't disguise the weight he'd lost, the stress lines that had appeared around his eyes, the way his hands shook slightly as he sat across from my desk. "You win," he said without preamble. "Whatever this is about, whatever you're trying to prove, you win. Just please don't humiliate me." I leaned back in my chair, studying the man who'd once made me feel like I needed his approval to succeed. "Cole, this isn't humiliation. This is hierarchy." His face flushed. "What do you want? Money? A public apology? My resignation?" I slid a contract across the desk toward him. His eyes scanned the pages, and I watched understanding dawn like a slow, painful sunrise. "Junior art director," he read aloud. "Reporting to Amanda Martinez." "Amanda has vision," I explained. "She understands collaboration. She might be able to help you remember what you once loved about this work." He stared at the contract like it was written in a foreign language. The salary was fair but represented a significant step down from his previous position. The reporting structure placed him under the supervision of someone half his age. "Take the weekend to think about it," I said. "But decide quickly. The industry is small, and word travels fast." By Monday morning, Cole was gone. No resignation letter, no exit interview, no final conversation. Just an empty office and a security badge left on the reception desk like a small surrender. His assistant, Patricia, knocked on my door around 10 o'clock with the details. "He cleaned out his desk over the weekend," she said. "Left his company laptop and all client files. Very professional, actually." Industry gossip moved faster than social media. By lunch, my phone was buzzing with calls from headhunters, competitors, and journalists who wanted the full story. The narrative was irresistible: woman builds company, buys out former employer, offers ex-boyfriend a junior position. Thompson creative founder extends olive branch to former Fletcher executive, read one headline. From heartbreak to hostile takeover, a marketing love story, announced another. 2 weeks later, I received an invitation that made me smile. The National Marketing Summit wanted me to keynote their annual conference. The topic, resilience and leadership, turning setbacks into comebacks. The speaking fee was more than I'd made in my entire last year at Fletcher. The audience would include everyone who mattered in our industry, including several people who'd witnessed Cole's dismissive predictions about my future. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't personal at all. Sometimes it was professional recognition that spoke louder than any individual grudge. The conference hall held 3,000 marketing professionals from across the country. Standing backstage, I could hear the murmur of conversation, the clink of coffee cups, the rustle of programs as people found their seats. My speech focused on resilience, adaptation, and the courage to bet on yourself when others won't. I talked about the coffee shop that became my first client, the small victories that built confidence, the importance of maintaining your vision even when others can't see it. Setbacks aren't failures, I told the audience. They're information. They tell us what we're made of and what we're capable of becoming. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Business cards flooded my inbox afterward, along with speaking requests, partnership proposals, and job offers that would have seemed impossible just 3 years earlier. As I was leaving the conference center, a courier approached with a single envelope. No return address, just my name written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a short note and an elegant invitation to a charity gala in Cole's hometown. You said I'd crawl back. Instead, I sent the invitation. Someone who learned to rebuild. I smiled, tucking the note into my purse. Even now, 3 time zones away, he was still trying to have the last word. But some stories don't need responses. They just need endings that feel complete. A year later, Thompson Creative occupied 4 floors of a downtown high-rise, employed 63 people, and maintained client relationships across 12 states. The awards on my office walls had multiplied, but more importantly, so had the success stories of businesses we'd helped find their voice. I walked through the open workspace where designers collaborated on projects that challenged conventions and exceeded client expectations. The energy was infectious, creative, professional, and fundamentally optimistic about what could be accomplished when talented people worked together. Amanda had been promoted to creative director. Marcus led our digital strategy team. Sarah's innovative concepts had attracted attention from industry magazines and potential clients alike. The culture we'd built emphasized collaboration over competition, growth over control. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the city skyline stretching toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, Cole was probably rebuilding his own career, hopefully with lessons learned about respect and partnership and the danger of underestimating people who refuse to stay broken. He built his ego on being needed, I said quietly to my reflection in the glass. I built my empire on letting go. Sunlight streamed through the windows, warming my face and illuminating the Thompson Creative logo that now gleamed above the city where everything had started. The view was spectacular, but the journey to reach it had been worth every step. Some stories end with forgiveness. Others end with success that speaks louder than any apology ever could.